I really appreciate the invitation of Track to be one of the speakers, and I really proud to be. I think I am the only Arabic speaker here in this seminar, which is really fantastic. I am very motivated in this occasion. My topic is talking about about Isis, and especially her assimilation with Aya in Egypt and also outside Egypt in Pompeii, which is a reflection. The reflection of this assimilation was very, very obvious. Uh, in fact, we should mention that by the Roman word, goddess Isis was attested, and her cult crossed all the frontiers of Egypt. And this is very obvious that Isis was the solemn Egyptian deity, was very popular by the Egyptians and also by the non-Egyptians. And till now, we have different people who are adoring this beautiful goddess. Different forms of goddess Isis appeared in Egypt, especially by the Roman period. And this reflects the popularity of her cult. We have different gods, as we said, especially Isis Canopus, Isis Eusenia, and of course, Isis Ayo, which we're talking about today. So my paper, the objectives of this paper was to examine the aspects of the Greco-Egyptian interrelation in religion through the cult of Ayo assimilated with goddess Isis, and it approaches the aspects of this assimilation through art, in the context of the literary evidence, and also in the tragic art. In fact, the mythology, how was Isis born, what was the iconography of goddess Isis, what was her origin, her genealogy, all of this was mentioned in different versions of the Greek mythology sources. For example, we have the writings of Achilles, names is a headed catalog of women, the suppliants of Prometheus, and also the library of Apollodorus Metaphorgus. But the most ancient source we have is the Aegimnus of Hesiod. And in fact, the latest source talked more about the assimilation of Io, or assimilated with goddess Isis, based in the context of the literary sources. And according to the different sources that we mentioned before, it's also depicted on different vases, the different pottery pieces that, according to the myth, that Zeus with the bull pursued to Io in the same way that he was also pursuing different other beautiful ladies in the Greek mythology. And he was the bull who conceived Europa. Zeus approached the horned cow Io in the fit likeness of a cow mating bull claimed Achilles. And this is one of the myths. And when Io reached Memphis, Zeus gave her an integrating touch, resulting in the transformation of the beautiful goddess to a bull and a cow into a human being. Even their offspring, Epaphus, is still a young bull. So Io was transformed into a cow, and her offspring Epaphus appeared here as a young bull. The son of Io, named Epaphus, was destined to be Egypt's first king, and this was mentioned in mythology. Through her son, Io became the ancestress of many heroes, and her descendants spread all over the ancient world. And from this point, this was a very important point that was the basic of the interrelation and the assimilation between the Egyptian goddess Isis and Io, because Isis in the Egyptian mythology was in fact also a mother of a bull, and Io here is a mother of another bull. So this was very similar to each other, therefore they were assimilated in fact. For many generations, they became the rulers of Egyptus, Menasha, Asia Minor, and they reached as far as the Arab lands. And finally, the descendants of Io returned once back to Greece, Cadmus, founding the royal house of Thebes and Danos. This was located in Argos. And in fact, as well as I said, Io and the Nile of Egypt were connected and relevant to each other because according to the mythology, Zeus was the one who ordered Hermes to bring Io to Egypt, and where she would be venerated as a Nile goddess who could control over the Nile and the winds. And this mythology was represented in Egypt, the similar locative sample of the city of Argos. And in fact, according to Isis myth, the cow Io fell in the Nile water, and the Nile god rescued her, who was goddess Nilus. And Isis returned to the poor Io into her original shape as a young, beautiful woman. So Io the cow fell in the Nile waters, and she was rescued by Nilus or Nilus, and he was the Nile god, but in the Greek version, because in the Egyptian religion we have another Nile god, a very important Nile god, but in the Egyptian shape, who was goddess Hapi, and he is usually depicted in the form of a festinity figure, as we said, or a fertility figure. In another episode of this myth, when Io reached Egypt, Zeus turned her back into a human figure, and Io became pregnant with a child of Zeus called Epaphus. Zeus turning Io into the white cow, and this is a very favorite scene, which inspired different artists, whether in the Roman world or even after that, the relation or the intimate relation between Zeus and Io, how he rescued her, how he turned her into a cow. The different episodes of this mythology was repetitively described or represented on the different aspects of art, as we said, such as pottery, vases, and other pieces of art. And even also in the modern paintings, the modern painters also had a certain motivation in representing or painting different pieces of art inspired from mythic narratives. This is, for example, the painting of goddess Isis as transformed into a cow, and she is handed to Juno by Jupiter, and this was by David Tieners the Elder. It dates back to from the late 16th century to the 17th century. In Memphis, Io was mentioned in different sources as the ox-eyed bull maid, and she was kidnapped, and this was mentioned in the verses of Cassandra's account. Returning back to the Greek Io and her strong relation with the Egyptian goddess Isis, referring to the etymology of Epaphus, the young god bull Epaphus was equated, as I said, with the Memphite god Apis bull. And this is a very interesting statue that dates back during the reign, back to the reign of the Roman Emperor Hadrian. And it's now preserved in the Greco-Roman Museum, which is recently inaugurated here in Alexandria since a year ago. And according to the different sources, especially the spells, for example, of the Pyramid text, we usually know that Apis bull, his mother, is goddess Isis. And she was usually depicted embracing her small bull with her in the form of a woman with wings, and she is embracing him with her wings. And this was one of the favorite iconography of goddess Isis and Apis bull together. As we said before, his mother, or Io, was known as the bull's maid, is essentially Io in the shape of a cow. This was mentioned also later in the different mythology or versions of myth of Isis, that she gave birth to Apis bull, and the tale of Io was written by the Hellenic poem Lycophron. What was the cult of Io? When was the cult of Io attested in Egypt? In fact, we have different literary sources that confirm that the cult or the veneration of goddess Io, especially connected with goddess Isis, was attested as early as the reign of Ptolemy II. And Isis Io was mentioned in the poems of Lycophron, and he was one of the poems were especially connected to the ancient library of Alexandria. Isis Io was also venerated, as I said, in Alexandria, particularly on the island of Pharos. And this is very interesting to know. According to the Ovid, followed by Martella and Statius, the heifer of Pharos was also the heifer of Isis Io. The poet of Statius refers to the arrival of the Greek Io to the Egyptian land and states, now she is the queen of Pharos. Many sources, in fact, and we should stop in this context. In fact, many sources mention how Io was assimilated with goddess Isis, and she became the queen of the island of Pharos, or the queen of Alexandria, particularly the island of Pharos. Also, Plutarch mentioned that according to the Mimesis, Dionysus, Osiris, and Serapis are linked to Epaphus, the bull, the son of Io. And in fact, also we should focus on the nature of the Egyptian mythology and the nature of the cult, the animal cult in Egypt, that the cult bull, the cult of the bulls, different shapes of bulls were venerated in Egypt. And venerating the bulls was one of the interesting aspects in the Egyptian religion. We have, for example, Apis bull, Memphis bull, and different other bulls. And every bull, every one of them had a special color, had a special cult center. And this was very interesting, by the way. Also, Herodotus mentioned and referred to the similarity of goddess Isis and Io from the context that both of them are mothers of a bull. And this was the point of comparing and making a similarity between the two deities. And he also referred to the veneration of the cows and bulls in Egypt. Herodotus, in fact, talked about the ancient Egyptian religion, and also Plutarch. Plutarch talked mainly about Isis and her struggle with that, and her relation with her husband Osiris, and how she could rescue him. Herodotus, on the other hand, talked about the Egyptian deities, and he made the assimilation or between them and the Greek deities, or referred to the assimilation that happened between the Egyptian deities and the Greek deities. And he talked from this vein that Isis and I were assimilated with each other. Herodotus mentioned that Apis in Greek is Epaphus, and this was very short, strict, and clear as crystal. And he gave also good account about the festivals of the Epiphany of Apis Epaphus. In some sources, especially that sources related to Herodotus, Apis was not only mentioned as Apis, no, he was mentioned as Apis Epaphus. Together, and the cult of this bull was, or the rituals of his festival, were found in Memphis by the reign of Cambyses. So we are talking even before the yeah, as early as much can we imagine that the assimilation was found in ancient Egypt. And as we said here, Isis and the Apis bull, the role of goddess Isis as goddess of Apis was confirmed by the excavations here of the North Saqqara. And in North Saqqara, it's a very important archaeological spot, by the way. We have the step pyramid of Saqqara, and I think many in the UK know that we have the step pyramid, but you have also the North Saqqara place. There we discovered different galleries. And in these galleries, we discovered different mummified animals. Many scholars, many Egyptologists are mainly concerned with the animal cult and how the animals were mummified, because the mummification process of the animals was a very important thing. They were presented sometimes as votives to the god himself. And the North Saqqara, or the cemetery of the animal cult, which was published by Emery and Smith, the excavated cow burials were named by Emery as the Isium, or the Temple of Isis. So this confirms that there was a strong relation between the cult of the bulls and the cult of Isis, on the other hand. And as we said here, that Isis was sometimes called Isit Tamut in Hep, or it's meaning the Isis, the mother of Apis. This phrase is repetitively found in different ostraca, were different found in papyrological sources in Egypt, and they spread in the Greek and the Roman period in Egypt. Also, we should mention that the later phrase also spread during as early as the reign of Hakoris of the 29th dynasty till the reign of Ptolemy the 14th. And these prayers were found in Demotic and different numerous limestone fragments in this site in Saqqara, and also in papyrological sources all over Egypt. Isis and Apis bull were also found on the Carian stela. The Carian stela are also discovered in Saqqara. They date back to the period between the 6th and the 5th century BC, and they usually represent, in most scenes or in most inscriptions, they reflect the standing bull of Apis, and they are being flanked by both Isis and Thoth or Thoth. Who is Thoth or Thoth? Briefly, he is the god of wisdom, and he was usually depicted in the form of a man with the ibis head. because the ibis was a very respectful bird in Egypt, and he was the bird who was representing wisdom and representing cleanness, because in ancient Egypt until now, the ibis never drink dirty water. He usually drink clean water. And therefore, the priest, when they are going to use water, they traced the places from which Tot or ibis drank his water, and they indirectly know that this place is having clean water, not dirty water. For example, this is a funerary stela. It's made of limestone and it's preserved in the British Museum. The Carian woman here is represented, pictured in the bottom. Can you see her as a winged woman? Okay, she's a goddess Isis here, and she is embracing Apis bull here, okay, with her two wings, and she's holding the mat feather in order to represent the balance of the word, the justice of the word. And in front of them, we can find God Tot. Can you see him? He is here a man with the ibis, the head of the ibis, to represent wisdom. And the Carian woman or the Carian community are a number of Greek settlers in Egypt who settled in Egypt even before the arrival of Alexander the Great, because many of our students didn't know before that the Greeks didn't enter Egypt immediately after Alexander the Great conquest to Egypt. No, we knew the Greeks even before the arrival of Alexander the Great. There were evidence that the Greeks settled in different places, especially Memphis and Sa'arat, as traders and merchants, and they came with their religious background. They came with their own cult and introduced many foreign deities in Greek deities to the Egyptian community during that time. And she is pictured here, the Carian woman here is depicted here on the funerary bed. Okay, and in order to be starting the embalming process or the mummification process. This repetition or this iconography of the Apis bull being embraced by both Isis and Hot Isis as his mother is repetitively found in the Egyptian art. If you are thinking in the future to visit Alexandria, where I settle and where I live, we have a very important burial chamber, and we have a very important catacomb, which is the catacomb of Kumushuefa. It dates back to the Roman period, by the way, the 2nd century AD. In the main burial unit, we have a very important scene that represents here Apis bull. Can you see him? And he is adorned with the sun disk, the crescent over his body. And here we can find goddess Isis with the same mad features. So this iconography continued even after the during the 2nd century AD. In fact, also Isis was connected as a cow goddess with Hesat and Hathor. And Heset, she was called in the ancient Egyptian language as Heset, and Hathor, which is Hether. The three are cow goddesses in ancient Egypt, and the three are assimilated with each other. Hesat was usually described and usually represented as the white cow, the same color of Epaphus, as we mentioned before. He said also cow was attested as early as the Pyramid text till the end of the Roman period. In fact, her cult and her attestation iconography was continued till a long period of time. Sadka was described to be the mother of the sacred Memphis bull, and also she was described to suckle a number of sacred bulls, including the white bull. Here, the white bull also is represented with the sun disk with the two feathers, and the dots here are the small stars, the blue stars, because in Egypt, the ancient Egyptians imagined the skin of the cow as if it is with different dots in the nature, as if it's the sky with the clouds, but they transformed the shape into stars in their art. Hesat also was entitled to be the mother of Apis bull in Memphis, and she is also the mother of Memphis bull at Heliopolis. And so Hesat here as a cow goddess was also mentioned to be a mother of another bull. And Hesat, as we said before, she was strongly assimilated with goddess Isis. Both of them sometimes are represented having the same iconography. So in conclusion, and for this point, we can mention that the origin of Io in Egypt was mainly from the mythology, which connected Isis with Io from being the mother of a bull, either Epaphus or Apis. But in fact, other scholars tried to interpret that the word Io itself is very similar to another phrase or another word in Egypt, which is Iyah or Iyah Ahah, which is meaning the moon, the traveler of the moon. But this, in fact, opinion, I didn't believe in it because we didn't have any lunar character or lunar aspect of goddess Io. So it's more accepted to depend more on the mythological narratives in order to try to know and try to describe the assimilation between Isis and Io. As we said before, in the mythology, god Nilus was the one who rescued goddess Isis or Isis Io from being sent from the Nile. And this was also mentioned in different literary sources, such as Nonus Dionysiaca. He said, or in a part of it, said that Zeus, or Zeus was speaking, loved Io, and the wandering heifer from whom beside the Nilus or Nilus came to the Nile began by Epaphus. And this is, in fact, the bust of god Nilus or Nilus in the Greco-Roman mythology, which is in the Greco-Roman Museum, which is very worth it to be visited, by the way. Have we any pieces, any statues representing goddess Isis in Egypt? In fact, during my PhD thesis, I didn't found many pieces for goddess Isis Io, especially that she was in many cases mentioned or described to be a goddess of the Nile, a controller of the Nile, in addition to be the queen of the island of Pharos. I only found this marble statue. It's now preserved in the Louvre Museum depicting Isis Io, because the head of the deity here is adorned with two horns over her curly hair, and this is sculptured with the Libyan style. And the Libyan style of the locks of the hair is one of the favorable shapes of the hairstyles for the statues during that time. The Arias, also the poppies and the copra are decorating her forehead. And can you see them? The two horns here are adoring her forehead, referring to her relationship with Epaphus in one side, and also referring to her transformation to a cow, according to the Greek mythology. Isis and Io, both of them were assimilated, and they were described, by the way, here in Egypt to be the one who bring the flood of Egypt. Coptus, and it's a small town here in Upper Egypt, became the main worship of this shape of goddess Isis, and also her cult continued in this place till the 4th century AD. And during the Nile flood, certain ceremonies and different festivals were held and celebrated by the common people in the honor of goddess Isis Io. The Roman poet Juvenal described Isis Io as a deity, the Nile deity, through her description of a Roman dam in the region of the First Cataract. The dam was located between Egypt and Ethiopia, and Juvenal says, when the white Isis Io orders, she will travel to the end of Egypt. So Adif is the Nile waters are embodied in the form of goddess Isis Io. And here we should know why is this statement very acceptable here in Egypt, or why in Roman Egypt, especially if we are talking more specific, why is when the Nile camps or the Isis Io orders, what was the connection of Isis and the Nile? In fact, Isis was venerated as a Nile goddess as early as the Pharaonic period, and during the pyramid text, it was usually said that when Isis beats her wings, okay, because she was usually depicted in the form of a winged deity, the Nile flood is raised. And this, according to the priests, when their deity is ordering the Nile flood to raise, it will raise. For example, this is a nice pictorial from the winged Isis, which is one of the very common shapes of goddess Isis as a Nile deity, as a protective deity, from the Museum of Boston. So the role of Isis as a Nile goddess usually is represented as a wind goddess, because she was usually described to be the controller of the eastern winds and the southern winds, which are one of the factors of raising the Nile flood according to the Egyptians, and also her role in the mythology, because in her role of her mythology, she was succeeded in reuniting the different parts of Osiris. Because I don't know if you don't that, but according to the Osiris myth, Osiris was cut into different pieces, and Isis, with her sister Nephthys, succeeded in gathering or collecting the parts together. And in fact, Osiris considered to be an embodiment of the Nile flood. In other words, the Osiris, his kill by his brother Set, and his resurrection once again was very similar, or it was assimilated with the Nile cycle, the rise of the Nile flood, the low levels of the Nile flood, and so on. So when she succeeded in reuniting Osiris and reviving Osiris once again, this was the sign that she is controlling in the same part or in the same way on the Nile flood. So this is the relationship between Isis and Io. What was the relationship between Isis, Io, and the city of Canopus? What was the relation between the two parts or the two aspects of these deities and the city of Canopus? In order to know that Canopus was a very important city. It's now one of the submerged cities overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. And we have, by the way, a very nice small temple. It's a Roman temple, by the way, dating back to the 2nd century AD. It was discovered in Taposiris Parva, very near for Canopus. And it's dedicated, by the way, to goddess Isis. And Canopus was considered to be a city or a cradle for the cult of goddess Isis, even after the establishment or the foundation of Alexandria. Isis, Serapis, Hippocrates, and different other gods were venerated in Canopus, which is considered to be a recreational place, a spot for recreation, a spot for gardens, a spot for meditation. And also it's a very important religious spot for people who are wanting to meditate and wanting to heal, because here Isis was especially worshipped as a goddess of healing. And this is a 3D rebuilding of our marvelous temple, which is still preserved here in Alexandria. In the lost city of Osiris, of Canopus, there was a special shape of god Osiris, which is Osiris Canopus. What was the shape briefly of Osiris Canopus, the husband of goddess of Isis? He was usually depicted in the form of an earthenware jar, and the stopper of it takes the shape of Osiris himself, but in a Romanized shape. It's not the Egyptian traditional shape, and wearing the sun disk between two feathers. And sometimes he is wearing here a cap. It's like the Phrygian cap, I think, but it's here a traditional cap used during the Roman world. And this shape of Osiris Canopus, or this aspect of Osiris Canopus, he had a wife. What was the wife of Osiris Canopus? Isis Canopus. Isis Canopus was also depicted side by side with her with Osiris Canopus. They are depicted beside each other in the form of a jar, and the stoppers of them taking the shape of Isis and Osiris. And this is a nice pendant from the Roman period, and it's now preserved in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Also, goddess Isis Canopus in the form of a jar with a stopper, or taking the shape of the head of Isis, is commonly found on the coins, especially coins that are dating back to the reign of Hadrian and also Trajan, because this was the period in which the economical flourishment reached its peak. And here Isis is depicted wearing the horns and the sun disk, the Orias on her breast. Returning back, so I think it's clear enough that Isis was specially connected with Io, and Isis was specially venerated in Canopus. In order to make everything clear before going here to our marvelous Pompeii, and in fact, the iconography of the arrival of Io at Canopus, to the city of Canopus, was depicted in Pompeii. And this reflects two things. As we said before, the spread of the cult of goddess Isis, which became a universal deity, and it reached as far as Pompeii. The famous temple of the Isium, or the temple of Isis, was a clear evidence the cult of goddess Isis in the city, and this temple is located in the theater district and dates back to the 2nd century, and it's completely found before the earthquake that occurred in 62 BC. Here it's a reconstruction of the Pompeii, the engraving of the sacrarium, and which contains the different scenes that represent the different episodes from the Isiac festivals. In the central part, we can find Isis sitting upon the throne, sitting upon the throne, and on her left stood Canopus wearing a dark garment. Can you see here Canopus here? He is represented with his garment and the jackal head, and this is an Egyptianized shape, and wearing the sandals. And one of the priestess of goddess Isis also is represented. And here we can find also the Agatha diamond is drinking from this cup. Isis and this is a very important scene also on the right side wall here. We can find a female figure, and she is holding in her hand a shallow dish and also eggs and fruits, and she is going or offering this to a snake or a serpent. And in fact, we should make various lectures about the priestesses of goddess Isis, which is a very important topic, because the priestess of goddess Isis had different regulations, different theme, and different dresses, and so on. Also on the left side here, can you see them? Here we can find here a figure which is poorly preserved, probably a woman, probably one of the priestess of goddess Isis. She's rolling a globe on the floor, and a male figure is holding a cornucopia for the other side. And the Egyptian shrine here of Casa degli Amorni Dorati with a sistrum, two Isaic baskets, and a patira, which is also usually found or depicted in the scenes of the priestess of goddess Isis. And on the south wall, we can find here Canopus, as you can see, Hippocrates, Serapis, and also goddess Isis. So briefly, we could confirm that Isis was spreading her cult in every place in the Roman world, especially in Rome and Pompeii. So going back to the first scene of Pompeii, in this scene, we can find the mythology of goddess Isis transformation, which is pictorially presented here. And we can find here Hermes is going to slay Argos. The protector of Io is transformed into a cow through the conspiracies held at Juno. Held at Hera or Juno. We know that Hera or Juno was very a jealous wife of Zeus, and therefore some narrative of versions say that she was very happy while transforming Io into a cow, or this was mentioned also in the mythologic narratives. Another scene represents here Io and her arrival at Canopus in Pompeii, and this is representing also goddess Io. Here, can you find her? And with the two horns, and this is very similar to the statue that I presented, which is now preserved in the Louvre Museum. And she is interestingly carried by Nilus or Nilus with his thick beard and curly locks of hair, and she is welcomed by goddess Isis here. Okay, and usually goddess Isis, this is an Egyptian influence, that placing her legs over the crocodile in order to reflect that she is overcoming the evil spirits or evil powers. And here Hippocrates, he is identified with putting his finger at his mouth, either at the side of childhood or either in order to represent that he is a god of secrets and the medical secrets in special. And also the two priestesses of goddess Isis, all of them are holding the sistra or the sistrum, which was a very important instrument used during the ceremonies of goddess Isis. And as we said before, some scholars interpreted or tried to go more to the depths to interpreting the two scenes. For example, Bianchi interpreted the iconography of Io being raised by the Nile goddess Nilus because of her image, which was prevented to enter Egypt. Io was perhaps personified. The Mediterranean Sea was raised on the shoulders of the Nile to be received by goddess Isis, to be presented to goddess Isis. And this is reflects how goddess Isis or the cult of Isis was very important even to the Romans. Casadio believed also that the scene of Io with Isis, with the theme inspired by Apelles in the Metaphorces, and the hero Lokius appreciated the liberation and the release of Io by the goddess Isis. The two scenes of goddess Isis in Pompeii integrate with each other. They complete each other together in order to represent the concept of salvation. How they are presenting Io to goddess Isis, the liberation by Isis from any dangers and misfortune. And the concept even of salvation continued after that, even the spread of Christianity. And this is very important to say that the concept of salvation connected with goddess Isis was spread, and the cult of goddess Isis even continued even after the spread of Christianity. For example, we have the Temple of Philae in Upper Egypt, confirming the continuation of goddess Isis, the cult of goddess Isis, and her guardian of salvation even after Christianity. The Isaiah cult involved also initiation into the cult and the promise of salvation. It was performed in a manner of voluntary death and salvation obtained by favor. According to Apelles, from the 2nd century AD, he said that weep no more and your lamentations banish sorrow. And all of these are representing salvation, representing the concept of salvation, which was clearly connected to the cult of goddess Isis. The tragic paintings and frescoes found in the Greek and the Roman houses, and also in the temple of goddess Isis in Pompeii, considered to be a cross-cultural background for understanding Paul's gospel of Christ's passion. And in order to give a historical background, a historical meaning, a more deeper meaning for salvation, and how the people are talking about salvation even before the arrival of Christianity. The tragic painting and frescoes also considered to be an effective propaganda for the cult of Isis, Io, assimilated with the Egyptian goddess Isis. In conclusion, you can find that the relation of goddess Isis and goddess Io is one of the intriguing examples of the Greco-Egyptian religious interrelation. And this continued till the end of the Roman times. Many literary sources threw the light on Io and Isis were regarded as religious models, either for fertility, and also both of them are connected with the Nile waters. Both of them were connected with prosperity, with civilized worlds. Furthermore, a broader universal meaning was given to Isis Io as a symbol of salvation and liberation, the concept that continued closely related to Isis even after Christianity. Thank you for listening. I hope I was not, my lecture was not long, and I really thank you for this invitation once again.